I said to him, you're blowing, boy, because I knew he had hit me with his best. He's disheartened and I've got a little cut on my head. It was just a scratch. I said to him, you're blowing, boy. I knew from the end of the 4th round that I had him. Even in the 1st round, in my mind, I'd won the fight in the 1st round. We got into an early exchange and I hit him with a left hook on the temple. And I've always said this, I'm not somebody that needs to hit you bang on the chin to hurt you. I can hit you anywhere and hurt you. I hit him on top of the head and he kind of bounced back like a cartoon character. I'd like to say Sideshow Bob, but he just sprung back with shock. It was at that moment in time that I knew I got his respect and he knew he was in for a fight in that very first exchange. And from there on in, it was just about executing the game plan. One thing that was going through my mind is that he has the power to end you with one punch at any time and you cannot switch off for a second. I'll be honest, I came in too heavy. I shouldn't have come in at that weight that I did. Everybody knows I enjoy my food and it was one too many Nando's for me, I think it was. So I did come in a bit heavier than predicted, and in the 8th round, I was really, really blowing. It was a tactical fight for the first 4 or 5 rounds. I had to make him miss and pay. And it's the tactical fights that drain you, not the wars, because you are throwing punches and you're not thinking about what's coming. So when you don't have to think about what's coming, it's natural. But I had to think about making him miss, slipping, shoulder rolling, hitting his body. By the end of the 8th round, I'll be totally honest, I was completely spent and I was waiting and praying for that second win to kick in. So those are the words of Tony Bellew speaking in an interview on Soccer AM, which is a television program in the UK on Sky, I believe. And he was giving some insight into how he was feeling during his fight with David Haye the other weekend. Now, this is interesting to me. He talked about being too heavy, about being tired. He talked about believing that he had the fight won from as early as the 1st round. And I can certainly see that because myself and many other people felt that David Haye looked absolutely terrible in the 1st round. I mean, I commented, I think within a minute online, I made a comment that David Haye is not the same fighter, clearly. Just from 1 minute of footage watching him in the 1st round against Bellew, he looked terrible. His timing was way off. He was missing. He was swinging wildly. It was bizarre to see David Haye look so poor. I have never in my life seen David Haye look that bad in a round of boxing ever. Not even against Carl Thompson. He looked terrible in the 1st round against Bellew, even before he'd been hit with anything serious. So I can see how Bellew, having gone through that 1st round, felt like he was going to win the fight or had it in the bag. Now, this is where level of opposition really plays a part, because that was probably the same David Haye who fought Jurjai and Mark Demori. But Jurjai and Mark Demori are not world-class fighters like Tony Bellew is. You know, Bellew's a world-class cruiserweight. So he knew what moves to make in order to force David Haye to overextend himself and expose those mistakes that he had in his bag. You know, to expose that ring rust. Tony Bellew knew how to do that, whereas Demori and Jurjai had no idea how to do that. They had no idea what the hell they were doing at all. So that's where level of opposition really makes a difference, and it's something that people underestimate. That's what can expose ring rust. That's what can expose lack of technique, so on and so forth, is a fighter who knows what he's doing and makes subtle little moves to force the mistakes out of you. As far as the way Bellew was feeling and his weight, some people did comment on his weight. They said that he looked fleshy and flabby, which he always looks. I said that he's probably only, a few pounds heavier than he is in the ring for his cruiserweight fights. And maybe he's a few pounds heavier than that. I assume that he probably comes into his cruiserweight fights at maybe like 209, 208, 209, something like that. For the David Haye fight, he came in at 213. So a few pounds heavier than what I would imagine. But maybe he's not that heavy in his cruiserweight fights. Maybe he's actually closer to 200 pounds for his cruiserweight fights. The reason I believe he is, around 210 pounds when he gets in the ring for his cruiserweight fights is because as a amateur, he fought at heavyweight, which is also 200 pounds. So he was in his mid-20s fighting at 200 pounds in the amateurs. So I struggle to believe that as a professional, all these years later in his, nearly mid-30s, he'd still be around 200 pounds bang on and not closer to, 210. I know he did have a stint at light heavyweight, but still, whatever the case may be, he says he came in too heavy and he was tired in the fight. Now, some people have remarked, and I think fairly so, that he was tired and struggling against the one-legged David Haye. Not only a one-legged David Haye, but a David Haye who looked shot to bits and one-legged, and Bellew was struggling. I agree with that, and Bellew there seems to confirm it in the quotes that I've given you. He said he was completely knackered after a few rounds and had nothing in the gas tank, and he was praying for his second win to kick in. If that had been a fully fit and healthy David Haye, certainly if that had been the David Haye who fought Derek Chisora, I think it would have been a one-way street based on what we saw in that fight. I don't think it would have been particularly competitive. Bellew, I don't know if he would have got stopped because he was doing a pretty good job of surviving. And as I said in my pre-fight video, David Haye is not a come-forward pressure fighter. He's not that efficient at cutting off the ring, forcing people to fight and getting knockouts that way. David Haye is a guy who likes people to come to him. So I don't want to say that a prime David Haye would necessarily stop Bellew, but he would certainly win comfortably and convincingly, in my opinion. And again, what Bellew said there tends to add more credence to that particular view. So yeah, I just thought it was interesting, Tony Bellew coming out and saying all these things, talking about his weight, also talking about being in a slugfest versus being in a tactical fight. He says being in a tactical fight, at least for him, is more energy sapping. I think it varies from individual to individual. I think for some individuals, being in a slugfest is going to sap them a lot more. But Tony Bellew, being a naturally aggressive person, it's more, natural for him to just be in the trenches slugging away. And it probably takes more mental energy for him to actually stay disciplined and fight tactically. Whereas for other fighters, it's the opposite. Other fighters have a more calm, measured mindset naturally, and therefore it's more natural to them to fight a calm, measured fight. Fighting really is a reflection of your personality to such a large degree. You look at Mike Tyson's personality, isn't that reflected in his boxing style? You look at Lennox Lewis's personality, wasn't that reflected in his boxing style? Muhammad Ali, same way. People's personalities really are reflected through the way that they fight. It's like the line from The Matrix. There's a character in The Matrix called Seraph, and he says, you never truly know someone until you fight them. And there is a lot of truth in that. So yeah, Bellew is, I guess, out of his comfort zone when he has to fight a tactical fight, and that's probably why it kind of tires him and drains him more so than being in the trenches just throwing punches willy-nilly. So yeah, interesting to me. Some of you guys might not find it interesting. Some of you guys will be saying, Hatman, are you really doing another video on Tony Bellew versus David Haye? It's time to quit now. Well, I found it interesting, so hopefully some of you will as well, in terms of what goes on in a fighter's mind during a fight. But for me, what sticks out the most is the fact that Tony Bellew felt like he had the fight won from the very first round. And I can definitely see that, because Haye just looked terrible in that first round. He looked awful. And he looked bad in his first two comeback fights. Well, he certainly didn't look as bad as he did in the Bellew fight, but he looked off. I did mention that at the time. But some people just hear what they want to hear. Some people just see what they want to see. And a lot of people took exception to me when I said that David Haye looked unusual and weird and off in his first two comeback fights, because that's what I saw. But other people felt that I was being negative or whatever. I'm not here to be negative. I'm here to just observe what I see. And if you have eyes for seeing and ears for hearing, they're open to taking what is actually in front of you rather than what you wish was in front of you, then you will learn a lot in life in general, not just in boxing. So yeah, before I get too deep, let me cut this short. It's Hatman, I'm out.